Hi, this is Doug Farley, and I'm the director at the Cobblestone Museum in Albion. And today we're working on another episode of History at Home. Today our guests are Pat and Gerard Morrisey. They are in their home, and I'm at the museum, of course. And they're going to tell us today about their collection of Crocks. They've got some really neat Crocks from the 1800s and the early 1900s that they've used in their household and have acquired over the years. And there's all sorts of different patterns and designs and functions. So they'll tell us about how the Crocks were used and some information about, they even had some mysterious contents in some of the Crocks as they acquired them. So Pat or Gerard, you want to get us started and just start telling us what you know about your Crocks?
Well, we know that they all came to life on this farm. We did not buy these somewhere else and, start a collection. And they started in the basement at the farmhouse. When Gerard and I were married about 37 years ago, I used to go down there and just tool around and see what I could find that was a good find. And then I'd sheepishly go upstairs and ask my father-in-law if he had any difficulty with me taking this up to our house. He said, "Oh, no, go right ahead, take whatever you want." But then he'd tell a little story about it. This is a butter churn, and he would say that his mother, Lizzie Sullivan Morrisey, was the best butter maker in Gaines, and that German families, now I don't know where they came from in terms of Orleans County, but they loved Lizzie's butter, and they would come make an effort to come once a week. And we have a picture of his grandfather when he was like 18 months, maybe 2 years, sitting on the steps with the crock, and Grandma was doing the churning of the butter. And so I said, well, I'm not going to churn butter, but I'll use that for something to hide away. So that was where we started. And you can tell there's a crown, and it does say 5, and that indicates that there's 5 gallons. And on each of the Crocks, there's a different number, and that tells you, what they are.
Gallons.
All of these Crocks were made in Wayne County. There's 3 or 4 different crock makers, but Wayne, for some reason, was a really significant maker of these Crocks. And when you go into antique books and you're finding them, they'll indicate, that they came from Wayne County, Burgess, or just all different kinds of things. But as I said, ours are all family pieces, not going around buying them at shows and stuff like that. So
give us some of the interesting folklore about what you found in your Crocks.
Well, I think the number 3 with the 2 big flowers is probably maybe 1880, something like that. And I was on one of my Sunday trips to the basement to see what I could find, and I found that Crock, and I looked inside, and there were little mounds of white, little mounds, and when you touched it, and I was careful because I didn't want some animal who'd been living there for 20 years to come, it would just disintegrate your hand. It would just fall apart. And so, of course, this required my father-in-law discerning for me, what was this all about? He said, Oh, Lizzie probably forgot when she got a refrigerator in the 20s that she still had eggs in the one in the basement. You would take that Crock and fill it with good cold water, and any basement is cold, so it's the closest thing to refrigeration that you have. And the eggs, when they're not good anymore, when they start to go bad, they float. So every week, if you went down the basement to get eggs, you'd take out any of them that were floating and get rid of them, and then the rest of them stayed in the Crock. But when you got a refrigerator, you didn't have to go to the basement anymore and check your Crocks. You could just put them in a bag, something in the house, or put them in the refrigerator and let them cool there. So it became not useless, but its function was easier for her to not have to go up and down the cellar stairs and do that. And so it just stayed there till all the water evaporated and all the Crocks or all the eggs disintegrated. And I was going to clean it out, and I cleaned the debris out, but I didn't want to sanitize it. I wanted the white to stay there because I wasn't going to cook any Crocks or chill any Crocks eggs in there. So
sounds like fossilized eggs.
Yes. So that was, and then I found done this crock, which I didn't bring out here because it's very plain, and it's 10 or 15 gallons, and there was some sort of goop in the bottom of it, and I thought Gerard knew what it was. She was making a batch of soap. Lye soap. And again, either it was time she just couldn't go up and down the stairs anymore, or she did have a stroke, so maybe it sat there till then. But I cleaned that one out, and now I have quite a grouping of wooden rollers that you do pie with, you know.
And I can remember the 4-inch deep lye, big blocks. You cut it in blocks and use that for soap. That was the lye soap was used.
You use that to mix it all up, and I can't imagine what you do with lye soap, but I understand if you go to these fairs where someone's selling homemade soap, they'll tell you that it's made with lye, and that's what you needed a great big crack for that. The rest of
my grandparents used it, so.
Did they? I can't imagine it, but they did. That's how that was done. So
tell us about those 2 crocks there that look like they would hold beverages there.
Down here, these. They probably did. A little bit of cider turned into quite a beverage drink in its time. And you could do cider or vinegar, some sort of liquid that you were trying to preserve. And it probably had some sort of a cork or something on it that's long gone.
That one looks pretty plain. Well, why do you think it's plain?
Because it's newer. It's probably a 1910. Mm-hmm. It tells you what the places where it was in Lyons, but the other one has more decoration because it's probably 1880, 1885, 1890, somewhere in there. But into the 20th century, they stopped. They weren't as big at decorating them.
Artistic, yeah.
It doesn't show the gallons.
It doesn't show the gallons.
Lyons,
it's just very practical, just very practical. The first one here, when we first moved here, we built this house, I put a shade. I bought one of those make a lamp kit, and I had a shade on it, and I used it for something for a long time, and then little kids knocked into it a lot, and I thought, maybe I don't need to do this anymore.
And this is J. Fisher, Lyons, New York, one of the many makers in Lyons.
Right.
It's on the canal for shipping, and they must have had a good supply of clay.
Raw materials, yes.
I learned that the crocks that have a special way at the top, they're not completely the same size, are food preservation crocks. Mm-hmm. You made pickles in there, you made sauerkraut in there, anything that you could preserve. I had wooden lids made for the other crocks, and I keep clean rags in there, but don't tell anybody, okay? They're underneath the table, and
you won't tell anyone.
I just thought that looked kind of funny having them. There's dish towels you don't use anymore, but sometimes you need a rag, or a clean towel that you don't want to use your good ones. So I had lids made up for the ones that I could, and made them more useful on a day-to-day basis, not necessarily making or putting food in them. So. Okay.
Any more last-minute thoughts about your crocks?
Yes. When I first came here, I went to an auction in Geneseo, mm-hmm. and one of these sold for, and I am not exaggerating, $10,000. Now it was a cow on it, and it had a lot of detail, but that's what inspired me to go in the basement at the farm and see what else could I find down there. And I never did find the jackpot, but I found lots to use, and put them back to use some use doing something with them,
And these were, they had wire handles to pick up with.
I have the wire handles, but little kids used to want to pick it up, and it wasn't safe, so I took them off.
Any thoughts on why some are white and the rest are brown?
Well, that's when the different glazes that they used, and that could be different crock places. They were different. Some of them have a kind of like almost a copper look to them, and then some of them have more of a gray look to them, and then some of them have a tan. That's the different companies that did it, had their own their own glaze that they used in it.
Their own clay supply too.
And their own clay supply from the earth. It was different.
Very good.
Anyway, I'm glad I kept them, and they've been a a thing to talk about when people come and they've never seen anything like it, and they think this is just the bee's knees.
And the time frame, late 1800s for most of
Late
these.
1800s. The plainer they are, the more likely they're 20th century.
So do you think your children are going to enjoy your crock collection?
Well, that's interesting. That is a very interesting question. Are they going to, the one wants to live in a tiny house. I gave her grandma's trunk from Ireland that she brought all of her worldly possessions in. And I said, you can have this, but you may never give this to anybody else. I don't know. If they live in tiny houses, this kind of stuff doesn't really fit. So we'll have to see.
Very good. Well, thank you, Pat and Gerard. It was wonderful that you let us into your home and we got to see your collection of antique crocks. And you've done a wonderful job explaining all the history and the stories. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for being part of History at Home by the Cobblestone Museum.
Oh, we love to talk. So
Have a great day.